of Investor Relations at Westport. We're excited to bring you an in-depth conversation on Cespira's strategy, technology leadership, and market outlook as the company advances decarbonization solutions for heavy-duty transport. We're joined today by two distinguished leaders, Carlos Gonzalez, CEO of Cespira, and Dan Sceli, CEO of Westport and Chairman of the Board of Cespira. Carlos, you have been in the industry for more than 25 years, and you've now been leading Cespira for, I believe, about 10 months. Before we get into strategy, could you start by sharing a little bit of an overview of your professional background and I guess your first impressions of Cespira when you joined?
So first of all, I want to thank you, Dan and Ashley, for this opportunity. And obviously, I'll briefly walk you through my 25 years of career and how that journey naturally led me into my current role in Cespira. I am originally from Barcelona, from Spain, and I've spent more than half of my career abroad, living in Germany, Belgium, and Switzerland. And thanks to the global roles that I have been held, I have been blessed, because I'm always seeing that, traveling for business and being exposed to different cultures is a blessing. So I've been basically traveling around all relevant regions for automotive. I had also the opportunity to be part of global organizations such as Lear Corporation, Siemens Video, that was taken over by Continental some years ago, General Dynamics, and WAPCO, that also was taken over by ZF Group. In those organizations, I always split my career in two halves. So the first half of my career, I have been holding different opportunities of, let's say, growing exposure and responsibility, from being a local buyer to having responsibility on a commodity, global commodity leader, all in purchasing and supply chain management until I was being part in Siemens of the Global Council of Purchasing for Connectors. Then I was in General Dynamics supply chain management with logistics and all the quality functions and logistic functions attached to it together. And there was a point in my career that I wanted to be exposed to other types of responsibilities. So I decided to orientate my career towards sales, and I was in aftermarket, and then I was in global key account, and therefore I was then proposed by ZF Group to lead a business unit with engineering inside of it. So all in all, it was everything going very natural. And my last appointment, actually, before joining Cespira in ZF Group, I was serving as Vice President of Sales and Global Key Account Executive for Traton Group, which is one of the most relevant truck manufacturers in the world, having brands such as Scania, Navistar, MAN, and so on. And I was based in Switzerland in that position, where is the headquarters of ZF Group for commercial vehicles. So actually, I always believe that, one step led me to the next one. So the combination of having been in the trenches with deep OEM exposure has led me to this position where I am today, leading a company that is scaling up and in this phase of growth as Cespira. You were asking as well about my first impressions. So before even joining, before I was even contacted by this headhunter, I was always thinking that internal combustion engine had a long future ahead, despite all the trends on other technologies. And I was particularly keen on hydrogen. And actually, even in my role in ZF, I was discussing about that with my colleagues. And then when I was contacted, I started to investigate about HPDI. And the first thing that called my attention was the fact that the purity needed to run an ICE engine with HPDI of the hydrogen is not that high as with fuel cells, which is something that it's increasing the cost of hydrogen, obviously. So that called my attention. But when I saw the performance and I learned about the performance of HPDI with LNG and bio-LNG, I was convinced that Cespira was onto something big. Fast forward, so like today, I'm really energized by the scale of the opportunity ahead, by the products that we are having, which I believe have the potential to transform the industry as we know it and replace diesel.
Thank you. And from your vantage point as an industry leader, how did you validate, I guess, that Cespira and HPDI was the right move for you?
Actually, I'm a very hands-on guy. So basically, what I did, I'm always every time I'm traveling, I'm reserving some time, and in every country go to LNG tank stations. And I don't introduce myself whatsoever. I just go and talk to the drivers directly. So I had some fears or some question marks on the technology before starting. And the first confirmation I got in Spain, actually, when I was driving from Switzerland to my home base in Barcelona. I was with my brother, and I stopped in a station, and I talked to a driver of non-HPDI truck, but a gas truck, an LNG truck. And I was asking, like, how is the training that you need? How much time did it take you to learn how to load the truck? Is it dangerous? How do you feel about it? So that particular driver confirmed that it was as easy as that. Boom, boom. He just did it. And he didn't do any particular training. Obviously, he had some protection gloves and mask and so on, but he didn't feel danger at all. He was since 3 years doing it. So that fear was removed from my brain. Then I recall another trip in a station in France, and actually I was already with a couple of colleagues, and I was wondering if what we perceive as a superior technology because of the power is actually relevant for the driver. Because we always say we keep the same power as diesel, while when you go to spark-ignited, you compromise on that. And that driver was explaining me, because he was only exposed to spark-ignited engines. He was telling me, yeah, well, it's good for the environment and so on, but when you go uphill with full load in the Alps in France, you slow down to 45 kilometers per hour. No, but it's good for the environment, so I'm ready to to pay that toll. And that's where I said, okay, I was not there for educating him, so obviously I didn't start making a speech about HPDI, but I understood that the fact of having the same power as diesel, it's something relevant for the drivers, because you end up earning, gaining some time, and time is of the essence when you're in logistics. And the final one, I mean, I've been to many other ones in China and so on, but in the UK, there was a huge station. And I really invite you all to go there, because that's like looking at the future. Normally, those stations, you have like one big tower, where you have the LNG, called LNG, and then you have a couple of hoses to serve two trucks. That is massive in the UK. You had like 4 towers, so imagine the amount of LNG that they can store on site, and you had like 8 hoses, and it was a non-stop of LNG trucks. Mostly they were HPDI trucks, but you had also some non-HPDI trucks. So at this time, I decided to talk to one of the HPDI drivers, and I said, how do you feel about driving this truck? How is your experience? And he's like, it's same as diesel. I don't feel any difference, and it's good for my grandchildren. And this is where I said, okay, I think we're onto something big here.
For sure.
Excellent.
And maybe for the benefit of our audience, I know many have an understanding of a broad understanding of HPDI, but maybe in simple terms you can walk through what it means and why it makes such a meaningful improvement over diesel and spark ignited engines.
Yes, I'm always trying, because I never know, like who I have in front. So I'm an engineer myself, but to try to explain some kind of an engine or fuel system technology to non-engineering people, I want to do it in a very graphical way. So first of all, HPDI means high pressure direct injection. So basically what we're doing is we are operating in an engine range of run about 2 liters per cylinder onwards. So that is not, let's say, suitable for passenger cars. So basically that we are targeting, for example, for trucks, it's long haul heavy duty trucks is a perfect sweet spot for our technology, because they have engines with the right size, with the right duty cycle. So we're talking about 11 liter, 13 liter, 15 liter engines, that it works very well. It also works in other applications that have duty cycles such that they are very demanding in terms of power. So basically, whenever you have a big diesel engine is where our technology can play a role. So this high pressure direct injection, what we're doing here is we have a specific patented injector that has like 2 concentric needles you can imagine like you have the 6 cylinders and you have a needle goes on top normally. So you have this needle, but has actually 2 at the same time. So it's a very compact design that actually you don't need to retrofit the engine. It's fitting normally in the same hole as the normal diesel engine. So the changes that you have to do to the engine actually are minimal as an OEM. So what you're doing is you're injecting a little bit of HVO or diesel, wherever. And when you're compressing it, it's igniting. We call it igniting fuel. And then we inject at high pressure the fuel that we are running on this engine. For example, bio-LNG, we're having like 300 bars, but it could be as well with hydrogen in gaseous state, obviously. Or actually, it's not bio-LNG. I have to correct myself. It's gas, actually. It's a methane in gas form. So we store it in liquid form because it's more energy dense. And then we inject it already in gaseous form at 300 bars. But we can also do it with liquid fuels like methanol or ethanol, where you need to increase a little bit the pressure. So the system, in a nutshell, is for the OEM, you need to replace just a few components, like 3 components actually on the engine side. And with these 3 changes, you're running basically on a renewable fuel. You still need a small amount between 4 to 6% of diesel or HVO if you want to be completely environmental conscious, and that preserves the engine thermodynamics. So we are running the engine as it's a diesel. So the same durability, the same performance, the same power, and a similar range. So for adopters of this technology, they don't have to change much. So it's really straightforward. However, if you would like to turn an engine, a diesel engine, which is most of the engines in trucks, by the way, it's like 96% because it has been always the power horse of the industry, right? It's super efficient. If you change it to spark ignited, as an OEM, you have to change like change or modify more than 100 components, and also the performance that you will harvest out of that investment is not as good. You're losing like 10 to 15% power. The reduction in CO2 is not as much. So also you have more cost in terms of maintenance because every 40,000 to 60,000 kilometers, you have to change the spark plugs. So you have a number of limitations. Also, it's calibrated as a gasoline engine. So I think if you want to replace a technology, you have to be, hit the same kind of performance as the existing technology or even improve it, bring additional benefits, and has to be affordable. And I think we're in a good path there.
So maybe Dan, this is probably a good time for you to chime in. Where do you see OEMs leaning into HPDI's flexibility compared to some of the alternative pathways that they've been looking at over the last number of years?
Yeah, sure. I think I've been saying this for a little while now that the stars have aligned for HPDI and for Cespira. We've had a number of factors coming together at the same time. There's been this slowdown in the hydrogen production and market. It's just too expensive right now. It's no longer going to be coming in 5 years. The crystal ball says 10, 15 years. So what's happened is we've got a natural gas revolution. Natural gas is taking over as the foundational fuel for alternatives, and it's readily available. It's relatively stable. And the TCO for the total cost to operate for HPDI is the leader in the market. And along with that, you've got an entire global structure in place for servicing diesel engines that can stay in place. It can be used when a HPDI truck pulls in. It's effectively a diesel engine running a diesel cycle, but with natural gas. So there's a whole lot of unique effects that are putting HPDI on top as an alternative. And of course, I think there's a realization in long-haul trucking that battery electric isn't going to be the solution. There's lots of places for it, for battery electric, but not long-haul trucking.
Thanks, Dan. So Carlos, maybe you can add on there. How does HPDI stack up across performance, cost of ownership, and emissions in your eyes versus some of the other decarbonization options?
When we're comparing against spark ignited gas engines, so we already talked about the performance, about the torque, that from the user perspective, but from the fleet perspective, what you look at is the economics, because it's a capex for a fleet. The truck is a capex. You have initial investment, and you have some operational costs running, and then you have some maintenance costs. So what you're looking is at the total cost of ownership. And here is where we are seeing that because of the efficiency maintained as a diesel and the price gap between LNG today or bio LNG today and diesel, it is a very positive TCO array today, despite you have a slight or higher initial cost. So the HPDI truck is a bit more expensive than the diesel truck, but since the operational cost and maintenance costs are at a better place, we have a good, I would say, good economics behind. Another alternative is battery electric, and battery electric and fuel cells actually are particularly promising when looking at lower range, I would say urban or regional use, because in my view, the amount of power that you require and the amount of cargo that you have to move, that is a limiting factor. If you would have to have so much batteries on top to move this amount, despite there are already models very promising in that, it's very expensive as well. It's a very expensive initial investment. But I believe that the underlying problem is not only on the investment and on the charging infrastructure, which is what we are hearing most of the time. Let's take Europe as an example. In Europe, we have more than 6 million of heavy-duty trucks running today. So if you would like to change them tomorrow to battery electric, for example, you would not only face a problem of the charging infrastructure, like high-power charging, but the underlying problem is energy generation and energy distribution. So the amount of energy that you have to generate to move 6 million heavy-duty trucks is massive. And then you have the problem of distributing that onto the charging, until the charging point. And the network in Europe is not ready to support this amount of energy. Another path or another alternative, technological alternative that is being discussed are hydrogen-based solutions, where could be fuel cells, could be HPDI or ICE hydrogen-based. And that, I believe, it has a future. However, I think that it's going to take a bit more time as well because of the same reasons. You need to generate the hydrogen in the right and the right amount and make it available. But I'm convinced we're going to see early adopters towards the end of the decade. So hydrogen is something that I am looking as well carefully. And there is something that I've been learning the last 10 months. I was not aware about the biogas revolution that is going on. And this, I think it's super interesting. We have four kind of let's say, liabilities in the society that are creating environmental problems. And through biogas generation, you make four assets, actually. So for products you can commercialize. So you have the manure of the cattle, you have organic waste of the cities, you have the residual waters, or even biomass out of some like products. If you harvest whatever, so you have a lot of biomass that you're not needing. So all this amount of biomass through anaerobic digestion, you can turn it into biogas that then you can upgrade and have methane. So you can run HPDI trucks or inject it into the grid for energy generation or for heat generation. You have as well CO2. And this CO2 can be used in the pharma industry, or also in the food chain to preserve the food. And you have as well the compostate, that is a fertilizer without any chemicals in it. That is also, it's a very virtuous circle. And in some regions or some countries, you can even generate certificates of CO2 that you can then trade and sell. And there are even trading platforms arising. Today in Europe, we have like 1,700 biogas plants. And I believe that the plan is to invest around 28 billion euro and to increase by 900 additional plants until 2030. So it's a very interesting movement. And I'm seeing as well in other regions, early stages of the same trend. So I do believe that it will be in the future a good source of energy. Also, to keep each area, each region more independent from an energetic standpoint.
Thank you. Let's shift here to execution, Carlos. How's Cespira approaching market penetration and adoption as early adoption from a broader as you move towards early adoption from a broader scale?
It's a great question, actually. Today, HPDI is already in around 10,000 trucks. So we have more than 10,000 trucks in the field running. That's why I can talk to drivers and get very positive feedback. And in nearly 34 countries. Obviously, our main market today is Europe, particularly the UK and the Nordics, and now Western Europe is picking up. But we are looking at the different areas. So what we are doing is we have established what they call a market activation team, because what we need is to make sure that in each of the areas, in each of the countries where we believe there is potential for replacing diesel by bio-LNG or LNG, that the underlying conditions for adoption are there. So what we're actually leveraging on the diversity of our team in Cespira. We have people from many nationalities. So we are, for example, I'm taking care of myself from Spain and the Spanish-speaking countries. I have a colleague that is from France that he's looking at France, another one from Germany, and so on. So we are leveraging basically our cultural backgrounds in order to get closer to the market beyond the OEM. So actually here we're talking to different stakeholders like biogas builders, tank station builders, fleets, associations, and so on, in order to get the 360 view, because I believe we have to align as well the interest. We're monitoring per country a few KPIs that are related to fuel availability, about the price gap between diesel and LNG, about the density of stations particularly on the main corridors, and the market size and HPDI knowledge. So what we're doing on the one axle, what we're doing is influencing or aligning or communicating in different stakeholders. So the right investments in the right infrastructure is ready for fleets to take the step and bet on this environmental change. The other thing that's more on the outside and on the inside, looking inside, well, we have to change ourselves in order to improve the adoption rate. In my view, is cost, and cost. So therefore, we are implementing Lean Six Sigma. So we have started in our factory in Italy, Brescia, but we will deploy across all functions and I want us to speak Leanish. I think it's very important that we, as a company, we are having in our DNA to eliminate waste systematically. That should bring our cost down and increase the adoption rate, because then the TCO will only improve.
Thanks, Carlos. Those 6 KPIs are so key to understanding market adoption for HPDI. Dan, maybe over to you here for a quick second. What milestones do you think about matter most, I guess, as Cespira scales HPDI and increases adoption?
Sure. So, I mean, going back to the origin, I mean, this business was set up to be a standalone tier 1 supplier to the heavy truck market as a starting point. And, we're about halfway through that build out. It was going to be a 3-year build out, starting with finding, solid professional leadership, which we've done with Carlos. We're very excited that Carlos is on board and leading this team, building out the business so that we can operate as a tier 1 to the entire industry. The mandate was always to supply multiple OEMs, not just Volvo. And to that end, Carlos and his team have been working very hard at securing our second and third OEMs. Lots of activity going on there, and Carlos will probably touch on that in a little bit. But in terms of milestones, we need to continue to push for volume, and volume with directly with our current customer Volvo, volume with additional OEMs. Volvo driven by regional growth, as Carlos talks about. There's different needs in various regions, and so those are the things we're looking for from a board perspective to continue to build out.
That's helpful, Dan. And that leads into the next question here about the regional market specifically. Carlos, what does the heavy-duty transport landscape look like today in terms of demand and infrastructure readiness?
I think it's not one answer for all the market. So because there is not one market, there's different regions, and in the regions you have different situations per country. So I would like to start with India, because India, in my view, has always been the treasure chest of the industry because of the amount of talent they have and the innovative mindset. So I was observing the first sales of HPDI trucks in India during last year, that we have with more than 100 trucks right now running. And I was wondering, how can we, with European based truck as it is today, sell in India and competing against such a great OEMs as they have locally there? And with the cost of those trucks, of the local trucks, are a fraction of the cost of the HPDI trucks of today. And I went there with the team to try to understand. So the first thing that I understood is that the infrastructure, meaning road infrastructure, is improving at a very high pace. And this is enabling to carry more load at once. So that's the first thing that I noticed. Obviously, most of the trucks of heavy duty trucks in India are running on smaller engines. Therefore, there is a limitation on the amount of cargo that they can pull, despite they are specialists in pushing the engine to the limits. The other thing that I've seen is that those early adopters have a very strict and economical approach to it. So what they are looking at is at the TCO and the cost per kilometer. So the combination of having a more efficient consumption with a more payload and in a very dense area, which is this golden quadrilateral, which is the area between Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai, and Calcutta. In that area is where they're focusing on. It makes a TCO which is better than the local or the TCO with local makes, and also the infrastructure is helping, because we have right now run about 30 LNG stations, and India is a country used to use gas as a compressed gas as a fuel, so they're not afraid of using LNG, and the plan is to go to 1,000 stations by 2030. I didn't see at the time much about bioenergy yet, but lately, since I have been refreshing my network over there, I am hearing more and more about gas generation in India, plus all the imports that they have been securing through US and other countries. So India is a very interesting market. I believe that we'll see a great adoption rate there. But it's also interesting from a supply chain and from a talent view perspective. And the new trade agreement with the European Union that will hopefully be ratified very soon will only increase our interest into that market. Moving on to Europe, our current main market, I have confirmed there is a trauma in the industry, actually. It was in around 2020, 2021. Geopolitical situation, Nord Stream blowing, Ukraine war, problems in liquefaction in the US led to a huge increase of the LNG price at that time, multiplying by 4. Those early adopters are still traumatized today. And this is something that we have to address with the right information, with education, explaining why we have a better situation, why we have a tailwind, and why we believe that these long-term agreements that the European Union is securing with importer countries or imports from countries such as Algeria and the US, plus the generation of bio-LNG will help, or biogas actually, will help somehow stabilize the price. The gap in Europe is very interesting. In Germany, for example, you have run about a 30% price difference, which makes already very attractive as of today to switch to LNG. However, the trauma is there, and we need to understand, we need to be empathetic, and we need to educate, and we need to make sure that all the stakeholders in the industry are supporting with even fixed pricings or a mechanism that helps them take that decision without so much fear. But any fuel is at the end of the day influenced by geopolitical. I mean, in year 73, the price of diesel was also skyrocketing for other geopolitical regions. So there is no guarantee in any fuel around the world, not in diesel, not in gasoline, not in LNG. But what we see that all the elements are aligning, that we have a long-term stability with a very good price difference. And also there is some legislation coming in next year in Europe that will put additional burden to the diesel pricing because of the carbon content. The next region, obviously, is China. We cannot talk about the strategy without talking China. China already is probably the first region that did the change to adopt LNG at a scale, because infrastructure was there, and there was also a big push from the different stakeholders. More than 6,000 stations in China. Very interesting market, using TCOs with a very, very, very competitive TCOs and with a spark ignited, and we can provide additional differentiation in China. And also hydrogen could be very interesting, because if there is a region that can adopt a new fuel in short time, this is China. Also, BEF is growing a lot. So the dynamics in China are extremely fast, and we are connecting well with our partners there in order to try to support their growth plans. South America, an emerging market that we're watching very closely, particularly Peru, Chile, and Mexico for LNG, and Brazil for bioethanol. They share some kind of requirements with India because the infrastructure is not that developed yet. So they need more range than what we would need in other regions, such as in Europe, where 1,000 kilometers is more than enough to reach the next station with comfort. There is where we have to talk to our OEMs to see how can we support this enabling this growth in those regions. And lastly, North America, your market here, it's a CNG, compressed natural gas dominant market, but the innovation that I'm seeing in fuel pressure could result in a better TCO and lower emissions adopting HPDI. And for that, I believe that the Westport initiative of 700 bar CNG could unleash that market.
Thanks, Carlos. This is probably a good time, Dan, for you to talk a little bit about what we see in the North American market and how we see it could have the ability to accelerate HPDI adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, back to those stars aligning points I had made. I think they're really coming true in North America with the realization that battery electric isn't going to solve the needs of the fleets. With the natural gas prices very stable, infrastructure in place in North America, again, it's compressed versus liquid. We've got a market screaming for alternatives, and we think that we can bring to the marketplace a complete system, combining Cespira's HPDI, our high pressure controls and control software with a tank package, and in a very competitive way, give the fleets and the OEMs solutions to get on board with the alternative fuels. We've been saying for some time now, and hearing others saying it as well, that a significant portion of the long-haul market in North America will be natural gas within 5 years. You know, we're hearing 30-40%. So that's our goal. We think that the timing is right. The timing is right for the OEMs, for the fleets, for the fuel providers. Natural gas is absolutely available in the way they need it. It's just a perfect place for us to bring entry.
Thanks, Dan. Now's probably a good time to start thinking about key priorities. So Carlos, what are Cespira's key priorities over the next few years?
Well, for now, our focus is firmly on road applications, basically on the trucks, where demand and readiness and adoption are most immediate. We are also looking and evaluating off-road use cases, and we'll come back with a go-to-market strategy in the coming months, probably in the second half of this year. Our priorities today are expanding our sales with our current customer, something that we have already been successful in the past since we started the joint venture. We have grown 20% last year. and keep on with good expectations of growth. Second priority, expand HPDI to other OEMs, and we are also holding conversations. And the third one is work, as I said before, with stakeholders to promote mass adoptions. So going into the first one, how to increase the sales with our current main customer. So there are two main work streams. The first one is to develop features to address more use cases within heavy-duty applications and new markets such as India and South America. We have talked about ranges, but there are also other use cases that are very interesting that we are working with OEM to address. And the second one is to improve our competitiveness. I talked before about Lean Six Sigma, so that's falling into that area. So the more competitive we are, the adoption rate will increase. The second one about the other OEMs, we know that that we have a very strict process, and it's not a short one. Actually, it takes some time to get on board of a new truck, and there are some phases for it. So the typical process would be first to start modeling the engine, then engine testing, then we design a prototype vehicle, we run it, and then there is a decision to product development program, which takes normally 3 to 4 years. So it's something that it's a rigorous process that we are already working on with some OEMs, but as per contractual obligations, we cannot disclose additional information unless it's mutually agreed. Regarding the third priority, I already talked about our market activation initiative. So about how to make sure that we have the right stations. I can make an example. Turkey, we find it's a very interesting market, not only for local, because they have more than 1 million trucks, but also because it's a hub, a manufacturing hub for many applications, among them automotive applications. So I am working with the team to unleash this potential of the 6 countries that are between Turkey and Europe in order to make sure that we have the right coverage of stations. And therefore, actually next week, I will spend the whole week in Turkey discussing with government, with investors, and with partners in order to make this possible.
And what do you see as the biggest challenges in front of Cespira as you scale adoption? And what, how do you think Cespira is going to be able to push through them?
I say one of the biggest challenges today is to educate the market and cultivate a deeper understanding and clarity across the industry. You hear a lot of voices about the different technologies and very strong opinions. Fact is that today, in most of the regions, diesel is still the predominant technology of choice. And in order to make this awareness, we need to cut the noise. And in order to cut the noise, we need a good communication. It's not easy to explain in plain words why is this better. So, and in each of the stakeholders have a different pair of lenses. So we need to make sure that the messages are reaching the different stakeholders in what is the most interest to the driver in terms of safety, in terms of performance, to the fleets in terms of cost, to the OEMs in terms of easiness to convert their current platform to hedge different technologies and fuels in different regions. So everybody has a different viewpoint. So this education is one of the main roadblocks that I see today, and we are addressing this with a very clear communication strategy that you will see very soon as well. We are very present in social media. We're going to be present as well in key fairs, and we are also connecting with the stakeholders one after the other. And I can tell you that when a fleet is trying LNG HPDI or bio-LNG HPDI, they come for more. So that's a very good signal. So the recurrency of customers is a really good signal.
That is. We're getting pretty close to the end here, so I'm going to pose just a couple more questions before we open up Q&A. Carlos, what do you see? How would you define success, and what does that look like for Cespira over the next few years? And I will pass that same question to Dan after you tackle it.
For me, success comes in different phases. So we have defined for ourselves among our leadership team 3 phases that the company will be facing in the coming years. The first phase we call it Get Fit and Healthy. This phase is addressing basically our journey towards break-even. The changes we're implementing are part of the execution plan, and I expect this phase to be accomplished between 2026 and 2027. That's a frame that we are looking in order to complete this phase number one. The phase number two is called Prepare for Growth. And this is the foundation to support global scale and might require localization of certain components in some areas to support local market needs, and also will mark the launch of new features that we have touched before about range and maybe other applications. So will be the launch of those features that will enable additional use cases on a bigger scale. And that would take until year 2029. And phase number three is what I call scale up. That's, gloves are off and now we're going against this with everything. This will, and when the transition will be more feasible in the different regions. Thanks.
Dan, maybe I'll get you to weigh in here as well.
Sure. I think, going back to the board mandate that we've put in place, it's a buildup. I mean, certainly we're focused on making sure that technology performs, it has quality, our system costs are competitive, and then it goes to market adoption, whether that's a second and third OEM. We need regional growth, India, North America, and all of those things lead directly to profitability. And that's really how we will define success. As I said, it was always structured as a 3-year build out this tier one company from scratch, set it up and get it running and grow it and get it to profitability. And we're a year and a half into that, and we feel that we're very much on track.
Thanks, Dan. So this is the last question, formal portion here, and I will pose this same one to both of you again. What key messages should our audience take away from today about the role HPDI can play in delivering a practical, scalable decarbonization solution? And I'll pass it to Carlos, you first.
Thanks, Ashley. So for me, there is no need for a trade-off in terms of performance or for fleets to change the way they operate. I think this is particularly important. And as I mentioned before, in my view, for a technology to be adopted to replace an existing technology, it needs to be convenient and has to be more competitive. And we are ticking on both boxes here. With HPDI, I believe that we will see a very positive development of the company that will translate into a very positive development of the environment, which is what moves us as a company. The only reason for our existence is to improve the environmental situation of those applications that are very difficult to abate. And as this truck driver that I mentioned in the UK said, it's for our grandchildren.
Yeah.
Impactful.
Yeah, very good.
Dan, I'll pass that same question over to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I keep going back to the stars have aligned, and it's really interesting. I've been here 2 years now, and watching the shift in the markets, the shift in the demand by the fleets and anybody that's moving long haul transportation. I think that this is a watershed moment for Westport, for Cespira, in that we're going to have a market in front of us here that's going to adopt at volume this technology because it works. It works well. It gives them as Carlos said, it gives them all the needs in terms of power and torque they need. It gives them great efficiency, a great total cost of ownership. We're meeting all the needs that we're checking off all the boxes that would be needed to make this a growing business, and we're very excited that we're on our way.
Awesome. Thank you. We will now open the floor to questions. Again, please use the Q&A function at the top of your screen to submit your questions. We have a couple submitted already, so I will kick it off right away. The first one I'll send to you, Carlos. How capital intensive is scaling HPDI, HPDI manufacturing specifically, and what portions could be outsourced?
The outsourcing or insourcing strategy, at the end of the day, it's a matter of economics. So we have been investing as a part of the carve out. We have been investing in our factory, in our basically on the on-engine components, which are very critical for us. And we want to make sure that we have the right environment and the right cost level. And we have right now a capacity up to 10,000 units per year, also within the supply chain. So scaling up that to the next level is something that would take us run about, I would say, 8 months to 1 year for the most critical components. And I do not see that it's going to be very capital intense, because at that moment, it should be already self-funded.
Thank you. And this one is for you, Dan.
Mhm.
Understanding that Cespira was set up and needed some funding from its two parents in Westport, as is 55% of that. The question is, what is our funding requirement for Cespira? What is the cash burn per quarter that's going from us to them, and what's the outlook there?
Sure, sure. So we're a year and a half into a 3-year build out. 2026, the cash contribution in total will be around 20 million. Of course, Westport has 55% of that. Volvo has 45% of that. Going into 27, that's going to be substantially reduced. That's the third year of the build out. We're looking for volumes. We're hoping volumes are going to be such that number gets dramatically reduced. It is a volume-driven business, as was mentioned earlier, and at that point, as per plan, this thing will be turning and break even, and then making money.
Thank you. The next one here speaks to the trucks already on the road. So I believe you mentioned, Carlos, that we have about 10,000 trucks on the road, HPDI trucks on the road already. How do you see that number growing over the next 3 years, 5 years? What does that look like in your head?
I expect a double-digit percentage every year of growth in the next 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you. And then I know we did touch on some of the key KPIs that we're looking at with respect to growth over the next coming years. But if you were to think from an investor perspective, looking in, what are the critical milestones that you see that they should be kind of looking for us to talk about, to be excited about in the market over the next 12 months, 18 months?
View the critical milestones that will be published in the future in the next 15 months have to be aligned with either market relevant changes or with adoption of new customers. Those are the two key elements that we need to watch carefully. And because I think that the rest of the economic, or the rest of the situation is already in place. So in my view, these are the two key elements that we need to see: either opening in new countries or having infrastructure development of new routes are unleashed, or new customers, or even hydrogen. I think it's going to be very relevant.
Thank you. And then I know, Carlos, you did touch on this a little bit, maybe not exactly specifically, but when you talked about off-road and kind of beyond heavy duty, but the question was, is there an estimated time frame for getting Cespira's tech into ships? But maybe I'll broaden that, and you can dig a little deeper into what the non-heavy duty transport options look like for HPDI.
Yes, we are, as I said before, so we have some, let's say, first stage developments in two applications that are not truck, and this is still ongoing. And in the meantime, we have as well, let's say, ordered a very in-depth study about the different attributes of the different applications, because I think before spending money into going to the market, we need to be very knowledgeable about existing technology, competition, what is the potential of the market, what are the synergies, is the same type of engine used in different applications, what are the duty cycle sizes, and so on. So we are right now in the midst of doing this study. In the second half of the year, we're going to have more granular information. But if you ask me, I have a strong feeling that mining could be a very interesting application, and also marine. Both use cases are, we have already early numbers, and those use cases look very promising for our technology.
Thank you. Dan, I will pass this one to you.
Mhm.
This, from an investor's point of view, they're asking when can we see volumes, and be specific on volumes of volumes sold for HPDI.
Yeah. Well, we're in an industry where our customers, the OEMs, are extremely protective of their competitive information. We don't get to use their names very often. We don't get to use, in many cases, never. And they guard that type of information. It's guarded like their gold vault. And so specific volume projections going forward, we're not going to be able to share those. But once, at the end of every quarter, we can talk about how many trucks we built or how many how much sales we had. But yeah, we have to be very, very careful. It's a competitive market, and we have to honor our customers' requests.
Thanks, Dan. We have no other questions in the queue, so maybe I'll give you, Carlos, and you, Dan, a moment. Did you have any final concluding thoughts you wanted to share?
Go ahead, Carlos.
Well, for me, it's just to thank you the opportunity of explaining what HPDI, what we're doing in Cespira, how we are addressing the cost on our side, that we are very cost-minded and frugal, and that with our DNA of execution, of excellence in execution, and the passion of the team, I'm sure that we're gonna be able to unleash the potential of the market at different phases in different regions, at different bases as well. But I'm sure that we have a very good value proposition to decarbonize the market.
Excellent. Yeah, we're very, in closing, we're very excited to have the opportunity here. I think it's great that we get to, number one, introduce Carlos to the investment community. There's always lots of questions about Cespira, and that's why we set this up, to give the investors a direct view into the running of Cespira and where it's going. It has a really bright future. It's got a great team. I've obviously spent a fair bit of time with the team and have complete confidence in their ability to build and grow this business. And we all look forward to continued communication, and we'll probably do this again.
Well, I wanted to take a moment to thank you both for your insights and helping to set the stage for this important conversation. And I wanted to thank everyone who joined today. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you listening. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me, invest@westport.com. Happy to hop on a phone call or answer any questions via email. Thanks again for joining.